Welcome to another episode of Wall Street Bets podcast, where we talk about decentralized finance and democratizing DeFi to make it more accessible to everyone. I'm Venus DeMille, and today we'll be joined by Tony DiMatteo, CEO of Lottery.com, to talk about his plans to bring the lottery to the blockchain. But first, as a quick recap of the week, Disney CEO Bob Chapek said yesterday that he's preparing the company to blend its physical and digital assets in the metaverse. Chapek's comments come as tech and entertainment companies appear to be closely following as Meta, recently rebranded from Facebook, shifts its focus to augmented and virtual reality in the metaverse. In social media news, as reported in Vice, earlier this week, Discord CEO Jason Citron posted a tweet teasing integration between the game-focused platform and Ethereum, setting off a total shitstorm. Twitter has launched a crypto research team, which will be led as technical lead by Tess Renierson from the University of Pennsylvania. And the city of Miami will soon give out a Bitcoin yield from its staking of cryptocurrency to its citizens. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez announced on CoinDesk TV Thursday morning, we're going to be the first city in America to give a Bitcoin yield as a dividend directly to its residents. And in international news, La House, a Latin American property tech startup backed by Bezos Expeditions, said it will accept Bitcoin for real estate transactions, adding to the region's growing adoption of the cryptocurrency as a means of payment. It is unclear if La House is the first so-called prop tech to accept Bitcoin. For more on our weekly news, go to our YouTube channel for WSBDApp. And now to welcome Tony DiMatteo, CEO of Lottery.com, a venture-backed technology company based in San Francisco, California, and Austin, Texas, with additional offices across the globe. DiMatteo is responsible for global initiatives and the development and execution of the company's long-term strategy. He's a sought-after industry speaker and thought leader, and his approach to entrepreneurship, cryptocurrency, and the gaming industry has been reported on in the Wall Street Journal, VentureBeat, TechCrunch, Incorporated, and more. DiMatteo previously held numerous executive and C-level positions in the tech companies across multiple industries and is a current leader in writing the playbook for security token offerings and serves as an advisor to several ICOs and blockchain companies. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Let's talk about the news. Are there any surprises in there for you?
Did you say Miami? That was pretty surprising to me. And also the metaverse one is very interesting for us.
Yeah. Well, I do have a question buried somewhere deep in this interview about Lottery.com in the metaverse and will it exist? So excited to get to that one. And yeah, Miami's it's interesting because, I think it is one of the mayors across America who has been, quite bullish, not only about cryptocurrency, but I think in terms of wanting to become a really major hub for it, a major global hub. And I think part of that's helping the public, helping its citizens understand sort of like how it all works and why it's beneficial. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it's great.
Interesting.
Very exciting.
So you come to us with a plethora of interesting experiences, leading the road, paving the way to Lottery.com. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background?
Sure. My background, I'm really a serial entrepreneur, very just sort of tech heavy. I got into technology in 98, 99 in San Francisco. And so I saw the .com boom and bust and got to witness the what worked and what didn't, I'll say in that. And then I've really just been in technology the most of my life. By trade, I'm an IT guy, so I understand technology very well. I'm not a good developer. I would say my team would say I'm a terrible developer, which is why I don't touch code anymore and haven't for a really long time. But I've dabbled sometimes. But in any case, I met my co-founder about 8 years ago, and we decided that we were just going to build things and together on the side. I was running a company, he was running a different company, and we decided to build things that have to happen eventually, things that are inevitable. And one of those projects was Lottery, and obviously this is the one that's taken off, and it's been our focus for now, over 6.5 years. As of last week, we're a public company now. We're on NASDAQ as LTRY, so it's been a long road, but it's been rewarding and a lot of fun.
Yeah, congratulations. The NASDAQ listing, that's a huge evolution. It's a huge
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very big mountain to climb. Yeah.
And was that your first time taking something public, or was that a completely seasoned experience?
No, it was brand new, and I think we've always just been a very nimble company and always looked for opportunity and what is the next right step for us. Obviously, going public, I think I've always believed that we would end up as a public company, especially once we acquired the domain of lottery.com, and we had that property. We rebranded from Autolotto, which is the name of the company previous to that, and I just thought, I really believe that we could attract this retail investor base just by, on the strength of our brand and what we're doing and the opportunity. We have such a huge blue ocean ahead of us. And so it just made sense to us. And so when we had the opportunity, we seized on it.
Yeah, amazing. That would have been a bold move. That would have been a bold move to take on something like this. And so tell me also a little bit about when you got interested in blockchain technology and when you became aware of it.
Sure. Well, I'll say, I always think like I'm late to the game, but I think everybody feels like they're late to the game. But really, I still think we're actually very, very early in this whole thing. It was probably around 2017, 2018, where I became aware of it enough to, dig in a little bit. And my interest was really more on the technology side versus the cryptocurrency side. And, I started to see what that technology can do for people, and not just in terms of, obviously in gaming, I think all gaming has to move to the blockchain at some point, just for the integrity of that and what that brings and the transparency, but also in things like voting and other applications. I think the world is going that direction, and so once we saw that, we decided that obviously this is a direction we have to go. It might take some time, but it has to be part of our core as we go forward.
So let's demystify the lottery for people, because
Sure.
I know we all know the lottery exists. We know you can walk into a store, buy a ticket, different, you've got a few different options there. But I think for most people that might be the extent of their awareness of sort of, the actual, what's the business model and what does it have to do with the government? What does it have to do with the people, and why is it good?
Sure. No, absolutely. So, typically I'll say in the US, each state can, create its own lottery. We also have a multi-state lottery, like a Powerball and a Mega Millions, where the states get together and say, we're going to have one large progressive jackpot where, each individual state, they'll sell their own tickets, but it all goes towards one jackpot. And the way that ticket is broken down is it's roughly, I'll say 30 to 40% of whatever the ticket you're buying is going to go towards building that jackpot, and then the balance goes towards good causes in that state directly. And then, obviously some margin for the operators and the companies that actually produce the tickets, et cetera. But the idea of the lottery has always been towards good causes. And so in some states it's for education, in some states it's for veterans and other causes around that line.
And is it a public-private partnership between lottery.com, let's say? I mean, I know there are different operators, but if you're the operator, is it a public-private partnership between you and the government? And is it for the government to say which organizations benefit, or do you partner directly with the organizations?
So on the lottery side, we, effectively, well, I'll say our model, domestically speaking, is that we operate somewhat similar to like a DoorDash, where we are a courier of the ticket that you're purchasing. So we don't, in most of the states, we don't have a direct contract or a partnership with the state. And ultimately, it's their lottery, and they are the ones who determine the good cause in that manner. But outside of the U.S., we can, again, and this is really, I think, the next evolution of what we're building, is that we can operate our own games outside of the United States and have a multi-country game. And, my hope is that it truly becomes a global game where people can play a blockchain-based game. They can either participate with crypto or fiat, but still have the core of the game is blockchain. So they have the integrity knowing that the draw is legitimate and that's completely transparent. And then, really what I want is that when you're playing, you can actually choose and vote on where that portion of the funds for the good causes will go. And then even to expand on that, eventually the goal is to have full transparency into where those funds went. And, if it was for poverty, who got fed, how much did they, how much cost was there in between? And so there's full transparency from the entire loop, from the moment you play until, the actual good cause has been realized.
All right. So you're going to take it upon yourself to actually do that final reporting to say, I mean, obviously one of the great things about blockchain technology is you can actually see where the money goes in terms of one wallet to another, right? Like there's no question that you only gave out a partial prize or you gave it to the wrong person or whatever. It's like we have that transparency, which is great, and which isn't really available currently in the lottery system. But then you guys are also going to take on the responsibility of saying, we're going to make sure that this goes where we believe it's going and that it does what we believe it's going to do. And we're going to report that back to and I guess we wouldn't call them quite investors, but our players.
That's right. No, yes, that our players. And I'll say that this is a multi-year project, meaning, initially it also takes the cooperation of the nonprofits to, allow us to make sure that they have that same transparency. But I do believe imagine that we can, raise whatever it is, $50 million for this specific good cause. Maybe that's childhood, poverty and just actually being able to eat. Now we believe that we'll have these nonprofits and charities coming to us, and we can make that deal with them that we demand, and we expect to have full transparency on where all of this money went down to the last mile. And so that's sort of how we're sort of changing the conversation, if that makes sense. And changing, I hope, the world eventually of how, charities are funded. And we should all have that expectation from any charity that we donate to, is we need to know where that money is going.
Yeah. I think that's refreshing. And I'm happy to see someone building that transparency system and also that final reporting system. Because certainly there are a lot of, projects that launch in this space that do purport to, give some amount to charity, but it's really, really hard for people to track that. And I think often the organizations don't know that they're being invoked in the project. So they don't necessarily know how to receive it or who they're aligning with in that regard, which can also be quite scary. I think for a charity, when this sort of like bag of money shows up overnight and you're not quite sure where it came from, which used to be once upon a time, those were just like your sort of like secret donations, right? From your anonymous donors. But now it's like, there's a much bigger question mark over that. So I think that's going to be a really welcome development, and it's going to take a big company and organization like this to build something like that, to have the incentive and the resources to do it. So I think that'll be a great addition to the space. But we also we start talking about government partnerships and charities, and then we start to get into the question of regulation. And, I know there's obviously it's an endless conversation in all areas of crypto and DeFi to try to, gather some kind of insight into what to expect and how's this going to work. And it's again, like very case by case. But when it comes to lottery.com moving to the blockchain, what do you guys have to consider in terms of regulation?
Well, sure. There's a lot in terms of regulation. Obviously, all of gaming is highly regulated, and so there's licensing requirements, and it's important for us to always be on the happy side of that. Is we don't want to be, the way that we've always said is we're not here to disrupt the industry. We're here to help advance it, and bring it online and bring new technology to it. So sort of as we progress, in some cases we can cast a very wide net depending on the game that we're actually offering to folks, and in some cases we need very distinct licensing. And that's just on the gaming side. And then obviously you have other issues, which are on the currency side, is what currencies can we accept in a given country. And, the system that we're building is intended to be incredibly flexible. So the overall goal is to, when you come to our property, whether that's lottery.com or sports.com, is that we want to show you whatever game you're legally allowed to play at that moment in space and time. We obviously need to check your identity and your age. And then obviously what payment methods are allowed in the place that you're sitting or standing at that moment. And so it does get very complicated, but that is our overall goal, is to just cast the widest net possible where we're perfectly legal and on the happy side of all regulations. And again, I think if we can do well and build this into a game that the consumers flock to and that they want to play in, is that makes the conversations with regulators much easier. Because obviously they're incentivized by, the tax revenue, so to speak, to benefit those good causes.
Yeah, which is you might be the first person to introduce an incentive to the government when it comes to crypto. I think they might like you for that. It usually goes the other way. Right. But it also, that brings up another interesting question for me, which is, I would think on the one hand, one of the things we've all heard the tales, the rags to riches stories of lottery winners who, fortunes gained and fortunes lost, where they were unprepared perhaps to inherit such a fortune overnight and either, squandered it or gave it to the wrong people or were targeted. There were a lot of sort of various concerns, I think, that we could apply to the sort of like 1.0 version of the lottery. This is obviously a new evolution. And one of the things that blockchain can provide as well is like it's transparent, but there is also a privacy factor there at the same time. How do you feel about whether or not the winners need to make themselves public?
Sure. Well, so in sort of the typical, games around the world, and certainly in the U.S. is, I'll say most states, when somebody does win a jackpot, is they have to, reveal themselves publicly. And the reason for that is to ensure the integrity of the game.
Yeah.
And what I mean is, if nobody knew and had any idea that who won the $50 million jackpot, that would cause questions of did somebody actually win, or did that money just get recycled somewhere and maybe nobody actually won. And so and by the way, I fully trust that the games in the US are completely legitimate, but that's why those laws exist. And so, but that can, when you're talking about a blockchain game, is we just solve that problem in a different way, which is that you can tell, it's completely transparent that yes, somebody did win and that person was actually properly paid out. So they can still retain their privacy, and we can have that legitimate game. So the question is legitimacy, and it's just handled in a different way when we're talking about blockchain.
Yeah. And I guess what would also be sort of interesting from a privacy standpoint for someone who maybe isn't into crypto yet or doesn't have a crypto wallet, but realizes they can, I'm assuming it's going to be possible to perhaps purchase your ticket with fiat, but receive your winnings in crypto. Is that one of the faculties?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think we just see currency as currency. And so whatever comes in could be paid out in a different way if the player chooses so.
So that could also be a wonderful option to be able to say, I might give you my $5 bill, my last $5 bill, but when I'm walking out of here, no one's going to be able to access what I've just won. It's like there is no bank, there's no mattress money. Like this is actually safe and tucked away on the blockchain. And in a way that, my crazy relatives and my jealous coworkers and whatever aren't going to really be able to approach me in the way that they might have in the previous iteration of lottery. It's interesting. You had a lot to kind of like unwrap and unpack and solve for in all of this, right? Like this is a pretty revolutionary transition for something that's such a legacy institution.
No, that's true. It is, and it is. It's going to be a multi-year project to figure out all of these things. But we do expect to be able to launch our first game in 2022, and we're very excited about that. But with all of the legal complexities, we're just going to have to work through those one by one.
Yeah.
And just keep taking steps forward on that. But that's just the nature of the beast. But I think the total addressable market right now for lottery is about 400 billion outside of the US.
Wow.
And that's expected to be about 625 over the next couple of years.
Wow.
And so it's a huge market and it's growing. And I think that we are, I think we're leading the way on the technology side to make that happen and create a truly, global gaming platform that can be utilized in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. And are you working with blockchain game developers? Are you working with traditional game developers? How are you approaching the game side of it?
So, I think one of the first games will just be a similar game, like a draw game that happens 2 or 3 times a week as a progressive jackpot. But the platform's evolution is intended to allow multiple types of games, whether that's, a Keno game, a bingo game, a charitable sweepstakes, that could be online poker, that could be slots, etc. And that leads also to, how we are evaluating these various blockchains to build the platform on. Is obviously it's important for us to have, very high speed, low latency, high throughput. But additionally, it's important for us to choose a chain that is environmentally friendly and does not have huge energy requirements. Because you can imagine if we can build this out and it does become, as big as that we all think and hope that it will be, that we don't want to have a detrimental impact to the planet just for playing games, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I love that. It makes a lot of sense, and I think what's cool is that you can actually imagine scale now in a way that maybe, when Ethereum was created, they weren't necessarily thinking about what that throughput was going to look like in just a matter of a few years. I mean, the space has exploded so quickly, and so fast that we can't blame the developers of these various blockchains for maybe not anticipating the explosive growth. But now that we're living with it, and we're already looking at everything from Ethereum gas fees on the one hand to some of the energy concerns around Bitcoin that have been raised. I'm not saying I'm here nor there on it, but to say that I think we're starting to understand, not just volume and scale, but also the impact of that. And, I think some blockchains are more inherently bent towards high throughput and high volume. And I love that you're looking at it that way, because I think a lot of people, especially people that are still coming into the space, are not always, considering those factors. And, I think the reason so much development does happen on Ethereum, which is an incredible blockchain, but so much development's happening there because that's where the market's always been.
Sure.
And so I think there's been less risk taking on some of the other blockchains. But that's great. And I'm glad that that's sort of part of your strategy and part of your plan. Now let's just talk briefly, because I understand that, this is at the end of the day a for-profit business, and most of the people that are in crypto in general are in it for profit. But there is also a legacy to blockchain and a legacy to Bitcoin about solving for social and civic problems. And when you talk about taking a platform like this global, and we now understand that this isn't just about, everybody chipping in $1 and one person walking away with $1 billion, that there actually a portion of that jackpot does in fact go to governments and nonprofits and, various causes, various charities and whatnot. What social and civic problems do you believe that lottery.com can solve, especially with this move to the blockchain?
Sure. I think quite a few of them. Again, I don't think there's a shortage of funds raised. That's the issue. I think it's more about on the transparency side. So that's a big push for us, obviously. But if you look at hunger, obviously is a huge one, and in my opinion, education becomes second to that. And I only say that as if if there's a child that cannot eat and have enough calories to sort of sustain themselves, then it's going to be very difficult for you to learn anything. Yeah. And so I sort of stagger it that way, right? Is we have to meet the basic needs of people to give them just a shot at life, and then help educate them and give them the tools and access to technology and information that they would not have otherwise had. And that's how we move forward. But it can really be anything, and then obviously the environment as well. But there's, if we do this right and we are successful in creating these sort of global games, there's really no social problem that we cannot address. At least on the funding side. Obviously, not all social problems require money to be solved, but we can help with the basics for sure. Environment, education, hunger, etc.
Yeah, amazing. That's I love how much you guys have thought this through. And I know you also are involved with some charities and set up some boards as well. So that world's not foreign to you. Right. And it's not outside your scope of interest either. So this is going to give you quite a tool to work with, I would say. And then let's also talk about geography. So we're talking about taking this global, putting it on the blockchain, making it worldwide. I often think about the lottery as this very American thing. But from our previous discussion, I understand it's actually popular in a lot of countries in the world, and it's not as distinctly American as we might imagine it to be. Can you talk about some of the countries where it's popular and how it might be different from how it is here, or why it's popular in certain places?
Sure. The lottery goes back centuries, and it's been used in ways to fund some huge public works. Like I believe the Great Wall of China was actually partially funded by a lottery. And so, the whole idea is we pool our money together. We are all, have a chance to win something. And then also, obviously, there's a project or something in mind where some of that will go towards that good cause to build something or to build infrastructure. But it's really, it is global. And as I mentioned, it's about $400 billion a year right now internationally, and that's expected to be around $625 billion over the next couple of years. But it's in really any continent, then it's extremely popular. Obviously Spain has El Gordo, which is a huge lottery that gets into the $1 billion prize range. It's more mature in the UK and Europe, and then also Southeast Asia, all of Asia really, Africa, South America. I don't think that there's any country that I can think of, as long as gaming is allowed, where lottery is not very popular. And in some places, it's really a cultural thing. It's something that people do every single day as just part of their daily operation.
I was just about to say, this sounds like it's a much more intrinsic part of human nature than maybe we've given it credit for being.
Absolutely.
And so we're talking about every continent in the world. The $1 million question I have for you is, will it be in the metaverse?
I don't have an announcement around that just yet, but I'll say I'm a big fan of that. And I'll say this. Our intention is to be everywhere that we can possibly be. And so you can draw your own conclusions from that, but it's a pretty cool idea. Yeah. Is it something that have you had any conversations with partners yet? You don't have to tell me who, but I can't say. No. Okay. I'm going to take that as a yes. Yeah. So talk to me about the crypto element, and why do you see this as being good for people and good for business? We start to talk about, you'll accept either fiat or crypto. We had a brief discussion about the current process of how it works in terms of having to go physically acquire these tickets. And what I'm picturing is like these Brinks trucks, and sort of manually process them in order to facilitate the lottery.com as it currently stands. So this is going to be a big transformation, not just to make it digital, but also to move it to the blockchain. But let's talk about the crypto part. Sure. Well, there's certainly, we've seen that there's a demand for crypto-based lottery games, and that's a certain, total addressable market, globally speaking, that we know that they want that. And as you mentioned, it may be a case where people want to play in fiat and receive their winnings in crypto. And so I think our overall perspective of it is that we just see currency as currency wherever we're allowed to obviously do that. And we'll take whatever payment methods that we can, and we will pay out in whatever currency that you choose to be paid out in. But obviously, I think all of this, just by being a blockchain-based game and platform as we move forward, that does drive adoption. Even if people currently are used to and still want to just play with fiat, we can help, I think, educate them about what blockchain is, and then eventually move them towards other currencies like crypto. And will you have a crypto wallet that's built in, or is this going to be like a MetaMask style integration? I can't really comment on that quite yet. Okay. Because I think it's something that comes up a lot here for us at Wall Street Bets when we talk about onboarding people into not just DeFi, but crypto in general, and what that process is like, and how hard it is for the majority of people to figure out, whether it's $5 or $5,000, how do I get it into a system that also allows me to take it out? Because you can't link your CEX account to these apps. And I think that journey, we're trying to make it better and easier for people. I see a lot of people starting to realize, oh my God, there's this huge addressable market that's not here yet because they can't get in. Right. Yeah. And I totally understand that. And I'll just say that our intention is to make it as easy as possible for anybody to play on our platform. And so I can say we've considered all of those things. And that is our intention. Is onboarding is obviously, just as in any online company, onboarding is one of the most important things that you have to be aware of, and to make that as simple as possible for absolutely everybody. Okay, I love this. So we have a question here from the community. With blockchain technology being a part of your system, are you considering liquidity governance as part of the transparency? And moreover, would governance be used to determine charitable benefits? So I think this question is sort of, are we thinking around whether a governance token or a DAO or something that gives the community the ability to decide? No, absolutely. I think it's very important for us to give the community the ability to decide where those funds go. That's maybe one of the most important things. The same thing is true as if you donate to a certain cause, you are pledging that for that cause, and you want it to happen. And I might even see it in several steps, meaning we may have a game that is dedicated to the environment, and then we have a pool of funds, and we say, okay, here's the pool of funds for the environment, and now there's maybe a potential list of charities that we have verified and vetted, And now we'll let the community decide who's actually going to receive those funds or portion of funds, and however the community wants to divvy that up.
I think that's great. I mean, so it's a perfect use of governance, really.
Yeah.
And it's a great application for it. We've got one more I'm going to throw. Most of these I'm going to save for the end of the show, but there's one more that I think falls in line with where we're sort of at in the narrative here, which is, are you going to mint your own coin?
We're going to mint, or I cannot comment on that quite yet. Yeah, but we'll see.
Seems like an obvious one. I feel like if I were your advisor, I'd say, of course you're going to have a token. It'd be weird if you didn't. But I think what'll be interesting. We'll have you back, obviously, when we're closer to
awesome.
You're going live with this, but I would say, like, based on just the constant feedback that we get from not just our community but just out there in the space. People are so excited about governance tokens right now. I'm really excited about DAOs and super excited about the metaverse. And, and when, having said that, a lot of the applications start to feel really abstract, of like you're trying to imagine how this works instead of some completely complicated DeFi platform. And it's like you have to be really invested for that to matter for you. So I think when you start to look at these much more consumer-facing products and consumer-facing platforms, it becomes almost like such an easier use case to start to apply this thinking to. Like, it would be easier for someone to understand how a governance token works on lottery.com than, in a very sort of like esoteric kind of distant platform that like the general public hasn't heard of before. So moving on from this, okay, so we may be in the metaverse. We may or may not be talking to people about this. We may have our own token. We can't speak to that either yet. But in terms of the sort of the blockchain solving, we've talked about suddenly this becomes global. So from a business standpoint, it's a much larger addressable market than being limited to a state or a country, right?
Sure.
And adding a gaming element to it that sort of, I think, very much aligns with the casino-like nature of a lot of what's already happening in DeFi and crypto. And then we've also talked about sort of ways of integrating crypto in this, fiat on-ramp, off-ramp scenario where we may or may not have a wallet to do that with. But I also understand you haven't decided which blockchain you're going to be on yet. Is this still the case?
That is correct. I hope to have an announcement around that in the near future. But again, we've talked to, I think, several top chains, and again, we're looking for high speed, high throughput, low latency, and one that does not have huge energy requirements going forward, and that can scale really at a very large level. Does that make sense? I hope to have that announcement soon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious because there isn't a lot of visibility around this. Like, how do those conversations usually go? When you say I'm interviewing blockchains to be my client, so to speak, but obviously the nature of blockchains are not traditional service providers. So how do you open that dialogue, and what is the sort of thrust of that dialogue generally?
Well, a lot of it is just our engineers evaluating the technology and understanding the roadmap that they have going forward and what they think that they could either, what they think the future of that chain is going to be. That's most important for us. And then obviously whatever their mission is, that we have to consider that as well. Okay,
interesting. Because I think there's also, we have an advisor on Wall Street Bets who goes by the name Django Unchained, and she's incredible. And she's an OG Bitcoiner who got very early into the Cosmos ecosystem, and she became their vice president of ecosystem development, which was such a great insight to understand once a blockchain exists, how these ecosystems are born and how important it is to also make sure not only do you like the blockchain, but you like the other projects in that blockchain. And you can envision some form of interoperability throughout that blockchain, where it's like there might be a mix of decentralized apps and payment services, et cetera, et cetera. But getting in there and figuring out even like what company do you want to keep on a certain blockchain, because it becomes a very, very interesting set of considerations. Like I kind of wish I was shopping for a blockchain partner right now. It sounds really fun, actually. And then, so talk to us about, the first rollout. What can we expect? When will it be? Where will it be? How will we find it? How do we engage with it?
Sure. So, I think you'll see the first game next year sometime. I don't want to commit to a date yet, but obviously we're working as fast as we possibly can to get it up and running. And in terms of where geographically, if that was your question, it will be outside of the U.S. We're not intending to be competitive to the U.S. lotteries at all in any way. And the best way to engage is just go to lottery.com. Whether that's on the app, the Play Store or the website. We have a web app there that you can play. That's where you'll go. And whatever, and I think in the near term, or not super near term, but soon you'll also see some announcements around sports.com as well.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. So it sounds like we're not going to miss it. It's going to be.
You won't miss it.
It's going to be very present.
Yep.
All right. And is there do you imagine this being, having appeal to a specific demographic just by virtue of being crypto? Obviously, we know a lot of crypto is very male.
Oh, well, the lottery appeals to a very, wide demographic, from, I think historically is obviously in the US, in the paper retail space that's a older generation and eventually they will age out. But our users are around about 2/3 millennial, but it's across all demographics. 18 and over, obviously, but everybody likes to play the lottery, and so I would expect that to continue and expand internationally around the same lines.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. It sounds like this might be, a real Trojan horse to get a much sort of broader demographic into the space, which I think will be cool.
Absolutely.
And how do you guys go about in terms of, obviously community plays a big role in crypto in a way that it doesn't necessarily in traditional businesses in the real world. It's a pretty big factor. Do you guys have a plan for how you want to build that online community around lottery.com?
No, we do, but I can't comment on that quite yet. But yes, we absolutely do have a plan to build that community out.
Okay, amazing.
And I'm sorry, I can't. There's just things I can't say.
It's okay. Look, we're gonna have you.
Yeah,
we're gonna have you back when you're really close to launch, and
okay.
Then you can give us all the alpha.
Perfect.
Man, I was like, I might be able to get like one thing out of him on this, but I'm not sure. No, we have obviously like a lot of audience questions as well coming in. So I think we are going to, Walter, I think we might be like a touch early on this, but I'm inclined to make sure we get through as many of these questions as possible. So I think it might be time to go. Yeah, there we go. Across the globe, somewhere in Russia. Here comes our man in Russia. This is a very long title card. Welcome, Meow Meow.
Hello, comrades.
Hello.
Welcome to cold Russia, and it's actually snowing right now here. So yes, it's really, really cold, and I'm right now in our Russian banner heating up. Yeah. So I'll switch off my Russian accent, just talk normal English, okay? Tony, since we have this lottery talk, I have a blitz for you, and I'd like to play a little game with you. I'll give you option A, B, and C in a bonus game, right? So you have to choose one. Under each letter is a question. I'm not going to say which one, right? Just I can say one is serious question, one is funny question, and one is just, just a question, okay? And the bonus game is just something special, which I came up just a minute ago.
Okay.
Okay, A, B, and C. Which one?
Which one's the funny one?
I will not say.
B feels funny, so I'll go with B.
Okay, B is actually a serious question.
Okay.
Actually, Venus can cross-check me because they're in the order in her chat right now, right?
Okay.
So, here in Russia, we have government lotteries, right? It's run by a private company, but they have a monopolist and they are connected to government, so it's a government one. So, in your opinion, which lotteries are better, private or government?
So that's a big question. There aren't a tremendous amount of private lotteries, but I would say the opportunity and, well, gosh. So, I mean, I think any lottery has to go towards either directly funding good causes or has to have governmental partnership to do that. And again, we're we're building this platform so that it can actually be licensed either by other parties or potentially by other governments to run their sovereign games as well. And in some countries, you'll find that that the players don't actually trust the integrity of their sovereign game. And so bringing blockchain to that sort of solves that problem for them so that they can actually get the tax revenue that they hope for. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So we remained with A and C. AC.
Like
AC
we'll
unit.
We'll go with A.
All right. That one is actually funny.
Great.
Imagine if you win the lottery. What you will do with the winning.
Oh, me, I feel like I've already won the lottery. I'm so lucky and blessed to be where I am. I haven't taken a vacation in years because I feel like what a lucky thing that's happened to me that I get to run this company, and every day is a vacation and life is great. So that's about it, man. I don't have a great one for that.
So vacation on a tropical island. Imagine it's live, right? The woman just brings the card. It's a vacation on tropical island. You want a vacation.
I wouldn't mind being on a deserted island for about a week with nobody around. That sounds like a great vacation for me, actually. I would do that.
Well, I think I feel you. I could share. I could share it with you. Okay, so we remained with C1, right? And it's more like just a question, right? Everyone talks about the biggest winnings, right? But what about the biggest losings?
Not sure what that means. What will the biggest losings be?
So, like, for example, if someone just keeps buying and buying and buying, like, do you have any statistics on that? How much, like, one person spends a lot of money on a lottery or something like that?
Do you mean like lifelong expenditures on lottery tickets?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure what the stats are on sort of lifetime, over the course of a person's life, how much they might spend on that. I can give you a couple stats on that, but I'll say most of the tickets, about 70% of all tickets that are bought in the US are bought by people with incomes of over 75,000. So most of the actual tickets and total tickets are bought by people with higher incomes. But obviously responsible gaming is important for us, and we limit everybody to play on our platform. You cannot spend more than, I think, $50 at any one time on our platform. And if we detect any sort of, addictive behavior on the platform, we just don't need any of that. And we can just sort of blacklist that player, which actually gives more accountability than you could actually do in the retail world. Meaning is, let's say, even if a store said, we ban you, you're not allowed to play here anymore, they could just walk next door down the street to play in another store. So we do take that seriously, for sure, but it's hard to quantify sort of the biggest loser, I guess.
Okay, and I left with a bonus one, right?
Okay.
So, there was some misconception, I believe, right, when people comparing lottery to casino. And you probably heard it a lot, right? So can you just briefly explain what the difference between lottery and casino, and does lottery act like a house and always wins?
Okay. So, well, I'll say, in the US, the difference between lotteries and, let's say, a casino is the lotteries are owned by the states, individually. So every state has their own lottery, and then they participate in the multi-state game. Whereas typically a casino, they apply for a license, which is still, ran by the government, but the casino itself is operating the game. So they're the operators of the game. They have the random number generators or whatever that game is going to be, or the dealers, etc. That's sort of the difference. Am I getting to your question?
It's actually like, here's the thing, right? As far as I understand, right, casino doesn't require a true random number generator, right? And lotteries require them.
Oh, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, any casino, at least in the US, they're very, very strict on the requirements and the auditing of any game. I mean, you could say, I guess it's possible for like a dealer with physical cards to find a way to cheat you, but I don't think that any reputable casino in the US is actually doing that at this point. That's they make enough money by running a very legitimate game that they don't need to mess around.
Oh, well, that's fair. So actually, I just want to talk a little bit to community for a second. Mark, you said that, wow, Russians have no sense of humor. That's true, sir. That's true. And you are going to gulag. Okay.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's a nice comment.
All right.
Very innovative. You're quite the visionary, Tony. Looking forward to your developments.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I actually enjoyed this interview a lot. I was on the background, listened to it, and I actually learned a lot about your company and how lotteries are much different from here in Russia. Because, like, before we started this podcast, I said, like, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket, right? So I'm going to say I won a whopping 50 cents. That's how good Russian lotteries are. So.
Right.
This is why you're still in Russia. This is why you don't meet many Russians outside of Russia.
Not very cool. Right. I think I don't have any more questions, so I pass it to you, Venus.
Yes. Thank you. I mean, and I will say also, Tony, this is super informative, and I think it's like I've seen so many questions come in today around this as well, which is we've some episodes where there are very few questions, and some where it's just like. So I can tell people have a lot of questions around this and a lot of interest in it, which is cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it does feel inspired, and it does feel like just listening to you talk, you can begin to understand how much layered thinking and problem solving has to go into creating something like this. Not just revolutionizing the platform itself, but the move to the blockchain and what that means. I think it starts to feel really important. And again, I have to tell you, like, up until we spoke earlier this week, I really didn't understand the business model behind the lottery in terms of the government and the sort of public-private aspect, and the degree to which went back to civic and social needs. Like I really didn't understand that part of it. So I'm really happy to be enlightened and educated and informed.
I'm glad I helped.
Yeah. And is there any questions that you have for us, or anything that you didn't get to share that you'd like to share with the Wall Street Bets community?
No, I thanks for having me on, and I appreciate the support, and I'm excited, about the road ahead. It's as we talked about earlier, it's another big hill to climb. We just got done with one, and there's more ahead, but I think we have a great team and we have a great company, and I'm just excited about the future. So thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
You got it. We'll have you back in the second quarter of 2022 when you guys are ready to launch this.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right, great. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks, Meow Meow.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.